what we've hidden in the past, it starts to soften then that shame reaction in the nervous system.
And I also just want to name that sometimes that can be challenging to do in a group. So if you're starting out, even when you start to name it with another person, that can start the healing process.
Yeah, so that shame, it does begin to dissolve when it's met with that kind of resonance and that felt experience that's like, I hear you, I feel you.
When another system, a nervous system says, you're safe here and I'm just holding you with compassion.
Yeah. I once witnessed a moment of profound healing in a circle with a woman who shared through a lot of tears a story she'd carried in silence for decades.
Welcome back to the Healing You Method podcast. I'm Gail Donahue, and as always, I'm joined by my dear friend and co-host, Gloria Lybecker.
Hello, everyone. It's so good to be here with you. Today, we're going to explore a tender yet a very powerful theme: unraveling shame in relationships.
We'll be asking, what happens when we name the unspeakable shame in a safe community? And when we do that, how does shame begin to dissolve through resonance and collective empathy and group healing? Because the one thing we know about shame is that it thrives, it just grows in silence. And when we carry something we believe is too much or it's unacceptable, our nervous system just contracts and we go into hiding. I don't know, there's people that have had that happen, but I can put my hand up.
Yes, yeah. And yet, when that unspeakable thing is named in a safe community, the spell begins to break. And it's the very act of voicing it, speaking it, naming it to tame it, as Daniel Siegel says. What we've hidden in the past, it starts to soften then that shame reaction in the nervous system. I remember there was a moment in a circle when a woman had sat very quietly. Her eyes were kind of downcast, and she was holding something very heavy in her chest. And the group, it just settled into stillness, that tender silence where truth starts to rise up. There's kind of a hushed silence. And then she finally spoke her truth around not not believing that she deserved to heal. And no one moved. There was just this hushed stillness that was like sacred. No one tried to talk her out of it or to reassure her or to give her a tissue. You know, we simply stayed present, breathing with her, bearing witness
Mhm.
with what it was like for her to be her. And the air, you could even feel it, it felt charged, very sacred. And then, just by being held there, then there were tears that could flow because people could relate to that. There was shared resonance, shared reality, even. And so when that shame that felt so private starts to loosen and we can recognize ourselves in another being, then the bodies begin to shift and there's deeper breathing that takes place. And again, the body then reveals that my shoulders dropping, color changing in the face, the pulse changes too. In that moment, the spell's broken, that spell that shame casts upon us. And again, I want to acknowledge it's not because solutions were offered to her, it was because she was met where she was. She could feel, felt in her system fully and gently without any judgment. And so sometimes naming the unspeakable in the safety of community is all that it takes for the light to begin to return within you.
Right. Yes, so true. And I've seen that happen as well. And when that fear or doubt, if when it's named, where they thought they had to hide, or, cover up what it was they were thinking or doing, And if a person's met with resonance instead of rejection, that moment is profoundly healing. And I also just want to name that sometimes that can be challenging to do in a group. So if you're starting out, even when you start to name it with another person, that can start the healing process.
Yeah. Yeah, one-on-one, it feels safer to the system. And then when you can start to grow to grow a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like that you say that. Mm.
Yeah. And so we just wanted to invite listeners, is there something that you've carried in silence that really longs to be named?
Mhm.
And if you can imagine in like naming how you were feeling or what happened and speaking it into a space
Mhm.
you where you're only met with compassion,
Mhm.
what shifts in your body as you imagine that? And just notice, like notice before and then as you imagine being in that safe space, just
Mhm.
notice what happens with your body as you sense and feel into that safe space where you're met only with compassion.
Yeah. Yeah. So that shame, it does begin to dissolve when it's met with that kind of resonance and that felt experience that's like, I hear you, I feel you, you're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah, that limbic brain, which is in the center of our brain up there, it is the organ that encodes that shame, and keeps it there until it can experience some healing through relational presence.
Yeah.
When another system, a nervous system says, you're safe here, and I'm just holding you with compassion, and that shame starts to lose its grip. And it's interesting, it makes me think about how powerful this is, Gloria, of this example, like looking at group empathy in
Mm.
action and how this collective presence of others can help dissolve shame for someone. And I think about, doing the classes and the group work that we both do. And if there's someone that has just shared something vulnerably, and the group has learned how to hold that, as we've talked about previously, and they experience um, no fixing going into the chat, no solutions or suggestions going in, oh, you should read this book, or etc., but just presence of being heard. And then when I've asked the group, can you put up your hand if you have a shared experience, something similar to what Maria has just described and vulnerably shared with us.
Mhm.
And then quite often, you see the Zoom hands go up or you see people's hands go up, and
Mhm.
you can just see that person's face and
Mhm.
body soften. And, for me, my body softens as well. And I just want to lean in more with
Mhm.
this person, with their experience. And then you end up, quite often you see heart emojis going up the
Yes,
screen. And so I love it because it just shows you how powerful this can be on in Zoom too. It just
absolutely.
really helps to have that compassion, met with compassion and be witness. It just helps to dissolve um, that shame.
It does.
Mm.
The group, it multiplies, as you'd said, all of that empathy, that resonance, even like I'd mentioned before in the healing herd, we all have these energetic fields. And when we have a shared focus of attention and we're holding that space with a shared intention, the resonance expands and it creates that neuroception of safety for everybody.
Yeah. So an invitation for you is to think of a time, and you might want to journal about this after listening to the podcast here. But think of a time when someone responded to your vulnerability with empathy instead of judgment. If you can travel back to that time and notice, how did your body feel in that moment
Mhm.
of just being held with
Yeah,
compassion and you didn't hear any fixing or any judgment coming?
yeah. I once witnessed a moment of profound healing in a circle with a woman who shared through a lot of tears a story she'd carried in silence for decades. And when we've carried things like in silence for decades, you know, there's a tangle of shame, and she also had like self-blame. And
Mm,
yet when she had the courage, she found the courage to begin to name it again, simply breathing with her, then that silent message that's given is there is acceptance there. There's inclusion, belonging, you're safe.
mhm,
And then the whole system does, as you've described before so eloquently, that how it softens and how even in a shared online setting, there's a visceral difference that everybody experiences together. And the shame that can be wrapped around somebody like armor, it can just begin to melt away. And because the beautiful thing is we no longer feel alone inside. We co-join, we sync
mhm,
up. And that's the medicine of community, the kind that doesn't rush, doesn't rescue. It just holds steady, allowing love to do the healing.
mhm. Yeah. And when we're in that field, that medicine that occurs from that group, the shame that once felt really unbearable, it's shared. And so it's shared and it's, carried, so it's less for the person that's sharing and for everyone because it's felt and then it can be released.
Yeah.
So when we're working in the groups, that collective empathy allows us to really borrow some courage and regulation from the group.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's so helpful. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so our invitation this week, you know, after we've been, I don't know, it's such a deep subject, and it's
Mm,
a place I lived in shame for so many years of my life. Um, so notice what happens. Where does shame whisper in your life? Notice where it shows up. That's been a very powerful practice for me, just to simply notice. Ooh, this is shame. There's that contraction. And and then instead of doing what you normally do, and like I did, hiding, quiet, getting quiet, withdrawing, then instead turn to at least one other. Like I would turn to Gail and say, allow myself to be witnessed by another being. You know, turn to a trusted friend if you have a circle, or even, you know, doing a time travel empathy within yourself. I found journaling that could help and giving a voice to these different aspects of your experience. And that leads beautifully into our next episode, which is going to be the healing herd, how horses reflect what we cannot see.
Yes, in that episode, we'll be exploring at the like what the knowing field is and how Gloria's going to share like how horses amplify it and how they reveal the hidden dynamics of our inner world that we don't see through their intuitive presence.
Mhm.
Until next time, may you allow yourself to be witnessed with compassion.
Yes, and may every layer of shame unravel in the presence of resonance and love.